Have you ever wondered why some people are irresistibly magnetic while others repel attention like the plague? If you think the answer is money, looks, or status, you are utterly delusional. There are many incredibly attractive people out there who can't captivate anyone, and many wealthy celebs who are seen as laughingstocks. So what is the twisted secret to becoming a person that others obsess over? The answer is both simple and depraved. Social vampires know exactly how to emotionally manipulate others through calculated indifference and psychological games. You see, the truth is that 90% of people are insecure approval seekers who are desperate for validation from others. Social vampires are the opposite. They understand human psychology and use it to make others manically crave their attention and approval. These emotional leeches exude an aura of unshakable self-assuredness that makes them seem supremely high value and desirable. When interacting with them, you immediately feel like you are the one being casually evaluated instead of them seeking your approval. But before you can become a master social vampire yourself, you need to grasp the psychological principles that allow these dark, charismatic types to make others rabidly fixated on them, which is exactly what this guide will impart. We'll go over 9 devilishly effective ways social vampires psychologically addict those around them to needing their approval and attention like sinful mind drugs. Use these twisted methods at your own risk. 1. Scarcity principle. When you first meet someone, you only get one chance to make a human's dopamine receptors light up with the intoxicating pursuit of craving your validation and attention, which is why social vampires limit their availability right away. They might open with light flirtatious banter to create an enjoyable human-to-human connection, but thereafter, they immediately cut off further engagement or interest intentionally. This abrupt disengagement will subconsciously trigger people to crave resolve and completion. Think about it. If someone met you with warm charisma, then pulled away, wouldn't part of your mind endlessly wonder why this person who opened mutually disbanded further connections so inexplicably? This cognitive itch to resolve that tension is the first psychological hook. You've now placed yourself as the pursued while investing no further effort. Let the human's unconscious mind chew on why they failed to secure more of your interest and focus. Their ego will hunger to prevent this imagined loss of something it never even had. But won't people just think you're rude or dismiss you? Not at all. You opened with harmless charm, then simply got busy elsewhere. Something about your brief interaction will linger, leaving them craving to re-engage that fleeting connection. 2. Focusing illusion. Once the hook is set, social vampires employ a cruel trick of psychology. They become hyper-focused on their own lives and passions whenever their insecure human orbiters are around, while ordinary people bore those around them by making their entire life about banal small talk and gossiping about others. Social vampires flip this on its head. They let orbiters see them totally engrossed in admirable goals and hobbies, like devoted artists obsessively perfecting their crafts. To an unhappy person spectating from the sidelines, this aura of passionate self-direction amid a seemingly rudderless world is like witnessing a bold explorer finding their way through life's wilderness. The human mind naturally fixates and confers high respect upon clear intention and capability, but social vampires take it a step further. They act as if the obsessive state they exhibit are incidental byproducts of their personalities rather than conscious performances crafted to inspire insecurity. 3. Perception alchemy. Social vampires understand that perception is malleable, especially when it comes to self-perception. So they bend reality to make insecure orbiters subconsciously pedestalize them. For instance, a social vampire won't directly insult or belittle someone. That would make them the aggressor. Instead, they employ subtle, hot-cold reinforcement tactics. One moment, they'll show brief interest in someone to elevate their spirits. The next, they'll abruptly lose enthusiasm as if something about the person bored them. This ambiguous push-pull wounds the human ego, making them start questioning what they did wrong while obsessing over reclaiming the vampire's fleeting positive perception. The irony is, the social vampire intentionally crafted that unstable perception to unhinge the person's own self-confidence first. 4. Environmental framing. Where you experience social interaction heavily plagues self-perception too. That's why social vampires are environment staging masters who choreograph settings that unconsciously make others crave their approval. For instance, at social gatherings, they'll easily engage new people with charm and levity at first, but they'll then deftly pivot to bonding more deeply with a dispersed in-group of insiders who already clearly admire them. This allows them to flatter new orbiters that they're naturally part of the vampire's tribe while subtly making them earn that meaningful social validation over time. The orbiter's mind will start framing the social vampire as the leader of an aspirational clique whose acceptance alone has self-worth conferring abilities. Even just glimpsing the vampire's nonchalant body language and body-rocking social grace at the center of an admiring circle can be psychologically crippling for insecure orbiters crave watching from the outside. 5. Manufactured mysteries. Humans can't resist an unsolved riddle that their egos demand they decrypt and resolve. Social vampires exploit this by behaving in calculated ways that fabricate perceptions begging to be unraveled. For example, they might briefly mention an exciting upcoming personal plan or two during passing conversations, but remain vague on specifics despite brimming charisma about it. This bait of an enticing intimate reveal will linger in people's mind thirst traps like a sequel-baited cliffhanger they must see through. And just as curiosity builds about the manufactured mystery, the social vampire drifts away to work on their secret endeavors. This leaving orbiters manically obsessing over figuring out the missing context that would make that person's life make complete sense to them. Some social vampires are so skilled they intentionally bake contradictions and paradoxes into their persona that incept questions in people's minds they'll never resolve. These unanswered life riddles can addict orbiting psyches for years as they futilely attempt to decode the social vampire's canned mystique. 6. Strategic disqualifiers. One of the cruelest methods social vampires use is strategically disqualifying themselves as romantic friendship prospects with fragile egos they've hooked. This makes the orbiter crave their validation even more through cognitive biases like reactance. For instance, they might mention how they could never date someone who, then list one of the orbiter's core traits or identities. This makes the orbiter springing to defend and advertise why they're exceptions to try recapturing the vampire's interest. Some disqualifiers are so potent, they can gaslight orbiters into trying to personality sculpt themselves into the vampire's idealized perception in deranged gambles at securing even crumbs of their empty approval. The orbiter's sense of self and identity becomes utterly warped as they shed core values and boundaries, all in desperation to contort into the singularly narrow version of personhood the vampire deigns as acceptable. This psychologically eviscerates the orbiter's dignity as an individual over time until they're hollow mouthpieces, obsessively mirroring whatever contemptuous scraps of interest the vampire temporarily dangles before retracting it again, reducing another into a subjugated shell of their former self. Manically addicted to the social vampire's parasitic withering attention, this is the true depths of their depravity. 7. Intermittent reinforcement. Like depraved dog trainers, social vampires know the dopamine lash of intermittent reinforcement is one of the cruelest psychological hooks for manufacturing obsessive behavior in people. They'll periodically reward fragile orbiters with minor crumbs of approval and superficial interest. A flirtatious compliment here, a deep conversation there. Just enough to fuel the illusion that investing more time, energy, vulnerability with the vampire could progress to a real relationship. But then they'll abruptly distance themselves again without explanation, leaving the orbiter confusion, doubt, and yearning for consistency. This cycle's like ramped-up addiction pattern, the human psyche hooked on chasing the vampire's affirmations each time the breadcrumb trail was laid down. Humans crave clarity and predictability, so keeping orbiters stuck in emotional loops starved of closure while sabotaging their other dating prospects can create depravingly unforgettable psychological imprinting that ruins their confidence everywhere else. 8. Trust power moves. The darkest social vampires don't just addict people shallowly, they parasitically feed on individuals' deepest insecurities by betraying genuine shows of vulnerability and trust. For example, the vampire might slowly build sincere rapport with someone over time, learning their life's most intimate details and fears. They'll portray themselves as trustworthy confidants who can be leaned on during personal crises and anxiety spirals. Then, when the orbiter is psychologically and emotionally raw-dogged from oversharing their unprotected mental vulnerabilities, the vampire will callously disappear without warning, leaving the orbiter feeling shattered, humiliated, and desperate for explanation or closure that never arrives. These deepest trust betrayals can scar people psychologically for decades, making them distrust ever emotionally investing in new relationships while still desperately craving the social vampire's absence back in their life like self-destructive heroin. 9. Become unstoppable. The ultimate psychologically addictive trait social vampires exude isn't a technique at all. It's an unwavering, unshakable sense of self that no one else can disrupt. They radiate quiet self-conviction, purpose, and identity crystallized into bedrock. While everyone else's egos are fragile kaleidoscope images desperate for affirmation, the social vampire's soul is scorched permanently into dazzling stained glass. Their self-perceptions can't be rattled, reframed, or bent as easily, no matter how hard orbiters hammer them with insults or manipulations. Deep down, frightened people addictively idolize and ceaselessly orbit those who appear to have transcendent self-actualization they can only taste in passing hits. Unknowing admirers are aimlessly spellbound by the emotional vampire's still waters, even as they drain others' spirit. So there you have it. The 9 twisted psychological principles social vampires use to cunning addict those around them. Use these dark methods at your own risk. Wielded carelessly, they can psychologically toxify and alienate people. If you have made it this far, let us know what you think in the comment section below. For more interesting topics, make sure you watch the recommended video that you see on the screen right now. Thanks for watching.